After this record-breaking hot summer, I'm ready to learn more about climate solutions that work for our community. If you're feeling the heat, check out the Idaho Women's Charitable Foundation's LEAD Symposium. On October 2nd at the Boise Center, hear from climate scientist Dr. Jonathan Foley of Project Drawdown and nonprofit leader Dana Gunders from ReFed. Don't miss out on this chance to learn how to make a real impact. Buy your tickets at iwcfgives.org. That's iwcfgives.org.
Today on CityCast Boise, classrooms are unlocking this week for students around the valley, with summer break in the rear view. But at Eagle High, allegations of racism and inaction hang over the administration there. Idaho Statesman reporter Sarah Cutler recently exposed accusations of harassment that were allegedly ignored by school officials. She spoke with our host Lindsay Van Allen about the claims and why one family is considering legal action. It's Monday, August 12th. I'm Frankie Barnhill, and this is what Boise's talking about.
Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today.
Sure thing. Happy to be here.
The details you reported about this claim are horrifying. So what allegedly happened at Eagle High School?
Yeah, so I think, at a high level, the tort claim here is alleging that since 2021, at least 3 students at Eagle High School were facing repeated racial harassment and slurs from some of their classmates, both in school and online, as well as hearing racist comments made by some of their teachers. The one additional piece is that there's an allegation here that these students asked for help from a lot of different sources in the school administration and did not really receive it.
And that's another really upsetting aspect of this story, that it sounded like the students were trying to resolve this. They were trying to get help, and that school officials, including the Eagle High assistant principal Mark Lannon, took no action. What has the school administration had to say about this incident, about maybe their lack of action?
Yeah, so we did reach out to, all of the different defendants named in the tort claim, and there were several. And by and large, folks got back to us saying, declining to comment pending the ongoing litigation. We did hear from the West Ada School Superintendent, Derek Bubb, that, the district is fully cooperating with the legal process, but it was hard to get much more detail than that.
Did the school administrators named in your story, do they all still work for the school district? Has there been any shuffling or changes in employment?
My understanding is that everyone mentioned in that story does still work there and is in good standing with the district.
And you mentioned Superintendent Derek Bubb. In your story, he was alleged to have said that there was, quote, nothing he or the school could do to help mitigate or prevent the harassment that students were facing inside and outside of the school, end quote. Has he responded to any inquiries about that statement?
Again, all that we heard from him was just this statement that the district is fully cooperating. And I believe as well, an overall statement saying that the district, prioritizes the well-being of its students. But again, nothing specific to that particular statement that he was alleged to make.
So it doesn't sound like you've heard much from administrators or the superintendent. Has the school board addressed this issue?
That's a good question. I would have to double check. My colleague, Becca Savrensky, who worked on this story with me, I can't remember if she reached out to them in particular about this piece. So I'd have to double check that.
Okay. So it sounds like because of the legal action, nobody is really addressing the allegations of harassment and racism.
That's right. And I should add as well that, the tort claim did name a lot of entities as defendants, including Ada County commissioners and the clerk's office, the city of Eagle, on top of the West Ada School District. And so we did hear from some of those entities, particularly the city of Eagle, that they felt that they were wrongly named as a defendant and that this wasn't really in their purview. So I guess I should add that separate from some of those declines to comment, some folks were saying, we don't think this is really in our lane.
Will that affect the tort claim at all? Like the having defendants who then say that they weren't part of the claim, they weren't involved, will that affect these families' tort at all?
The statement that they're not involved would probably not have an effect. I can say from some experience on some other stories that I have seen cases where somebody, a lawyer, files a tort claim and then does not end up deciding to go through with a lawsuit. So it's possible that, as time goes on, they may narrow the scope of their lawsuit and only target some of those originally named defendants. But I don't know specifically in this case.
And so I just want to clarify, because this can all get very, very confusing. A tort is not a lawsuit, correct?
Correct. A tort claim. It is confusing. A tort claim, I think, is typically filed around 90 days ahead of a potential lawsuit, and it's a way of putting a government entity on notice that you may be filing a suit against them. But it doesn't obligate you to file a lawsuit, and I think sometimes in that window, maybe there are conversations happening to potentially settle a case, something like that. So it's more of a way to put an entity on notice.
Sarah, you filed a public records request to get more information about this tort, about what was happening. What stood out to you about some of the things that you were finding out?
Yeah, I think there were kind of a couple of different pieces that really stood out here. One was the fact that, this allegedly went on for a pretty long time. It started in 2021 until, I believe, 2023. So I think that was one thing that jumped out to us, as well as mentioned, the victims apparently repeated attempts to get help from a really wide range of sources, and seemingly, not meeting with much help or meeting with inaction kind of at every turn. And I think one other piece that jumped out to us, me and my colleague Becca, who reported on this with me, was just the kind of pervasive nature, allegedly, of these issues, the number of different attacks and harassment, the number of students allegedly involved, the number of teachers involved. So I think there was sort of a pervasiveness that really jumped out to us in this claim.
And you mentioned that they went through, I want to touch on a couple of those things, that they went to lots of different groups to try to stop this. Did that involve teachers? Like, were they trying, going up the chain or trying to broadly resolve this? What groups did that involve?
Sure. And so the tort claim didn't specify necessarily, the order of operations, I guess you could say, but it does mention efforts to, the parents of the students were emailing with school administrators, setting up meetings with them in the aftermath of some of these events, trying to rectify the situation. The tort claim also mentions one student going to the school resource officer, asking for help. Separately, the tort claim does mention a third student who actually sent an email to the office of Boise Mayor Lauren McLean, asking for her office's help. So it was really kind of maybe decentralized efforts, but a lot of different efforts to try to get help from different people.
And then you also said that it was just for a long period of time, but also so many different actions. So with this tort claim, are they alleging just actions from students? Not just, because that's still horribly inappropriate, but was this students? Was this the entire school? Was this, multiple teachers or groups within the school? What was kind of the scope of this?
Yeah, it was a mix. So, I guess I'll start with the students piece, which is a really big chunk of it. There were allegations that the students were facing harassment on social media and at school. In one case, there's, a group of white students who, quote, incessantly were calling one student the N-word, telling them to kill themselves. There was one student who allegedly multiple times threw condiments and eggs at students' cars. So that's kind of one category of many actions. But separately, the claim does allege that there was one teacher who was apparently using the N-word frequently or regularly in his classes. It names sort of two different contexts. One would be in the context of talking about Black soldiers who were coming back from World War II and the treatment that they faced. But then there was also the case of, I believe the tort claim used the word unsolicited context, whether that was just kind of throwing out the word, the slur, more generally or randomly. So there were allegations both about teachers and students.
So with teachers being involved as well, not just students, is the family alleging that this was like a culture of an issue with the culture of the school or the atmosphere being created by the school?
I think that the family's angle on this, which does sort of touch on that, was this idea that through negligence and inaction, that the school and the school district were creating a hostile environment for these students. So I don't think that they specifically name culture, but it kind of wraps into that idea.
Yeah, maybe the idea that it wasn't only students, perhaps because of teachers' actions and words they were using, that seemed more acceptable or like it would be allowed.
Right. I think there was a big focus on the inaction and what that kind of implied about the acceptableness of these actions.
I saw on a comment in your story that at least one person said that this isn't new. This is something that has been happening for a while. Something similar happened to their family a few years ago. Does it feel like in your reporting and really digging into this that there's a pattern at Eagle High or other schools in West Ada District beyond this tort claim?
So I definitely don't think, that we got enough information beyond the tort claim to really affirmatively say that. We have the tort claim, which is talking about 3 students as victims. But yes, we did get that comment from one person claiming that they had similar experiences. And we also, I believe, got an emailed comment soon after the story published with more of a hearsay kind of example as well of someone who was aware of this happening. If either of those people, share more with us, we certainly would be interested in digging into it more. But based on just that information, I wouldn't want to maybe go further and say that there's a pattern. But I think it raises the possibility given those comments.
Yeah, that potentially this is maybe the first time legal action has been taken or threatened or the process has been started. But potentially this isn't a one-off. This wasn't just from 2021 to now.
I think that's certainly possible.
Racial bullying and abuse takes a huge mental toll on people. Did the family say how this has impacted their children's learning experience and education at Eagle High? One
of the victims, according to the claim, actually left the school and finished the education through homeschooling. And another one, it was mentioned in the claim, had started to attend therapy sessions, I think every other week, to deal with some of the repercussions of this. So I think, the evidence of the toll it takes is evident even just in the claim.
Would that be part of, if they end up moving towards a lawsuit, is that something that can be part of it? Like, can they quantify it caused this much harm and then move forward with their claims that way?
I'm not sure. I think I've seen in the past things broken out into financial damages as well as emotional damages. Sometimes I've seen that in separate categories. So I could imagine that here as well, whether that's the cost of the therapy, but also just the more hard to quantify emotional damage being called out separately. I should note, though, that at the end of this tort claim, the lawyer did say in the document that he was hoping this could be resolved without a lawsuit and was really hoping to just have meetings with the administrators and kind of rectify this. So I think that suggested to me that the family is, hoping to get this resolved, not necessarily hoping to file a lawsuit.
So we've got the story, we've got the tort. It sounds like potentially these families are in conversations with the district to some extent. So what's next? What happens what is the next step, or what did the families indicate is the next step?
I think, other than that note that I mentioned of, hoping to resolve this without a lawsuit, there wasn't a lot of detail provided. So the tort claim was filed June 14th. So we're looking at about 90 days out from there is when we might see a lawsuit crop up. And of course, that's something we would look more into. But short of that, it wasn't really clear what the family was looking for in terms of resolution. My understanding is that at least some of the victims may have graduated. So it's not totally clear what they may be looking for, depending if there's a lawsuit or not.
All right. Thank you so much. I know this is a heavy topic. This is definitely has impacted these families so much. So thank you so much for talking to me about it, explaining what impact it's had and what could happen next.
Sure thing. Thank you for having me.
All right, that's all for today here on CityCast Boise. Have you subscribed to our free Hey Boise newsletter yet? Every weekday, we send out news and events to help you stay connected. We'll put a link to subscribe in the show notes. We'll see you back here tomorrow morning for another local story. See you then.